Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar powered by HireEasy. My name is Dan Harten, and I'm going to be your host.
All right. Hold on. I'm interrupting Dan.
It's Brian.
Dan is getting over being sick. So real quick, in the chat, before Dan tells you what we're talking about, can everybody give Dan a hell yeah, because he showed up for this today and he is here to take names and to kick ass. Dan, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I didn't mean to do that.
No, you are good. I think the show needs to go on. I think this is an important topic that I have two incredible guests that are in this space and they know it inside and out. Again, we have Brian Fink, the Senior Talent Acquisition Leader at McAfee, a sourcing expert, recruiter, and storyteller who brings a fresh perspective on building those meaningful connections that we're going to learn so much about today. And then obviously the legendary Gerry Crispin, a lifelong learner, industry icon, and the co-founder of Career Crossroads. So Gerry has spent his whole life shaping best practices in recruiting and has impacted so many generations within this field. So together, I'm excited to jump in. And how this webinar came to life was, Brian, you wrote a newsletter back in December talking about relationships in your career, your personal life, and the meaning of networking. You opened the idea with that you are hyper connected, yet more disconnected than ever. And I feel like the recruiting community, our personal lives, we feel the same way. What inspired you to write this, and how did you personally navigate that?
All right. So what inspired me to write this is I want to give a shout out to Trent Cotton. That's TrentCotton. So Trent and I have been friends on LinkedIn. We have been friends on Facebook, and we meet up with people in person. We're part of the Atlanta recruiter community, which has a meetup on Thursday night. I didn't have Trent's phone number in my phone, but Trent and I connect on all these different areas. We hang out at conferences together. But like, I'm being very serious. Like, if you ping Trent and ask him, he will tell you that I didn't have his phone number, and he didn't have my phone number. And it was really disconcerting because we're super connected in all these different attributes, whether they're in real life or whether they're online. But we didn't have something as simple as the most basic way for us to communicate. Like,
What about old school?
Yeah, I know. Like,
You missed the old school.
Can I have your number, bro? I mean, we go to, I'm hanging out with him. This is the first Wednesday night in like 3 weeks that I haven't had dinner with him. Right. We're hanging out tomorrow, Trent. So it'll all be good and what have you at the Atlanta recruiter community. That was a point where I stopped and reflected about the fact that we've got all these relationships that appear to be really entrenched in deep relationships, but instead they're not. They're surface level relationships. So the more connected we've become online and on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on Instagram, and we know what's going on, or we know what glass of wine Gerry's having with his dinner, right? We don't know anything, right? Like, to reflect on that, Gerry has been a very generous mentor. We've had email exchanges, we've had dinners together, but I don't know that you and I have ever hung out one-on-one. Like, seriously, there's always been like two other people in the room. Not that I'm afraid to go to the Airstream with you, like I would be if it was Steve Levy. But this is, and also, like, Jill's in the chat, right? Jill and I have big conversations about big feelings. Yes, Jill, I'm giving some eyesight into this, over text, over email, over phone call, over LinkedIn, but we've never met in person. So there needs to be a combination of old school and new school, because new school doesn't cut it. It doesn't do the math right. It doesn't math. That's where it all comes from.
Gerry, how do you think networking has evolved? And when he's talking and referring to old school, what does that mean? How has that evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I read the article, and that's really when I sent a note to you and Brian and basically said, we really should have a conversation about this, because there's a lot of aspects to calling something a network, because it doesn't really indicate anything about the connection that you have, the relationship you have, the depth of it, just as you were talking about, Brian. And I do think that people, as they mature, grow up and start thinking about not just every relationship, but kind of the people that you would like to surround yourself with. And both professionally and from a friendship point of view, from a family point of view, we develop that and evolve that over the course of our lives. And I do think it gets refined. And I started to think about, when I was younger, perhaps very young, in my 20s, and I began to professionally focus in on who I really wanted to engage and how I would do that, and with the tools and resources that existed at that point in time. And today we're just like overwhelmed. You were talking about all the different ways you're connected, Brian. When you had just a phone that was hooked to a wall, that was about.
You were connected. You were connected.
Yes, at conferences you could hang out, but you can't be at conferences all day, every day. So fundamentally, it's a different kind of world that we're in now, and I'm curious as to whether or not we, collectively in our industry and profession, are thinking through how you move from a network to a community, to a set of people that you surround yourself with, that you can call on and who will call you back.
So Gerry, I want to go like meta for a minute, and not meta like the company Dan used to work for, or Facebook. But are you familiar with Dunbar theory, the 150?
A little bit, yes. And I would argue that has to evolve. That's an old theory, but why don't you describe it?
Okay, so Dunbar theory is I don't think it's an old theory. I thought it was like something I learned in graduate school. It's an old theory?
Well, you're getting older, and when you were in graduate school was a while ago. I'm just saying.
Okay,
but I learned.
Ladies and gentlemen, the role of Steve Levy is being played by Gerry Crispin today. Thank you so much. No, so I was in graduate school like 20 years ago. I think it's a theory from the mid 90s that talks about the fact that your community can only be 150 people at any given time, that you can only maintain 150 connections at any given time. And, I think that a lot of the in-person networking that is missing, or that we're trying to work through, is bolstered by some of these artificial networks, right? Like the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and the what have yous, right? Like, but I think all in all that maybe we're, and I've written about this too, is that we're an increasingly lonely species because we think we have this connection, and it's a dopamine hit, and it really comes to nothing. Is that, in the primate group of Dunbar, or the Dunbar said that in primates, you can only have 150 friends or what have you, and remember them. He also said that you could extend or multiply your friend group if you had a spouse, because your spouse was thereby charged with remembering some of these individuals for you as well. But like, I don't know. I mean, there are people that come into my lives that I can remember their daughters' names, right? And you could say, well, Brian, that's because you're a girl dad. So when you reach out to, it's great. I can remember Sierra's name, but I can't remember Aaron Lentz's name right now. But like, girl dads bond together, and we have that commonality. I think that also speaks to the creativity of community and what community means and how it works, right? I'm sure that, Gerry, you have a connection, whether it's on the surface or it's a little bit deeper, with people who've worked at J&J, because you kind of had that, because that DNA runs through that organization, right? Lentz, awesome. I just saw you in the comments. Thank you for showing up today, my man. I appreciate that. but also it's about that too. It's about showing up for people, right? Like, you know,
It's your behavior as well as theirs, but the fact is part of the intentionality of building that, whether it's 150 or multiples of that. And I would argue that now with intentionality, it is multiples because we have tools that make life much easier to be able to communicate in the moment. I can communicate in the moment on a given day with 40 to 50 people typically. And I might have some deeper conversations where I can actually look at them using Zoom that with 4 or 5. And the reality is, if I'd met them but meeting someone in person and having a one-on-one engagement that is a little bit more intimate is where deeper relationships certainly build. And fundamentally, we have more and more tools to do it, but we don't necessarily use them and think about the relationship that we are building and why, and what it does not only for us, but what it does for them as well. So, that's why when we start thinking about network, we start saying, oh, I'd like to be connected to this person. But we seldom think, well, why and what are we willing to do if we're connecting to that individual? I will tell you one of my criterion is if you're visible and I read your post and I like it, I will tell you.
and you're gonna feel.
I know what people can do is just click and like, but I mean a little bit more than that. I mean a personal message, and very often that personal message is not sent in public. Sometimes it is, but very often, if I really seriously like something, I'll send you a note about its impact on me and how I would use that, or something along those lines. So I'm looking for that connection. That individual I will want to be connected to on LinkedIn. So I will ask them to be connected on LinkedIn these days. I mean, 50 years ago, I had to write a letter to a publisher, and enclosed in that letter is a note to the person that I actually wanted to reach out to, who wrote an article or a book, but I don't have their address. I don't have anything that I could, let alone the phone number. And so I have to ask the publisher to forward to the author my comments on why I value learning. And I got to tell you, almost 100% of the time, the authors would send a note back to me. So as a young person in my 20s, I was making connections that I engaged in an ongoing way with some of the top leaders in my field. So I got to know them that way. And that could take months to do that. That's why, that Dunbar idea of 150 made sense. The amount of work it takes to network with someone at a deeper level where you begin to connect to relationship, it was just too much work. But today, we could do a hell of a lot more if we did it with some intention. Why would you want to connect with 30,000 people? Maybe if you've got 30,000 tech folks that could be part of who you're going to be hiring over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, that might be one thing. But how about the recruiters? How about the hiring managers? How about, it goes on and on.
I think the intentionality is there, though. Like you said, I think most people don't slow down to do that, right? I heard the principle of the 3 by 3 when you're looking and trying to connect with a person on LinkedIn or social media or something like that. And the rule of 3 by 3 is you take 3 minutes to review their profile to get 3 commonalities or specific things about them in your message, and you state those 3 things. whether it's the school they went to, whether it's you both have dogs, whatever it may be, do some research, 3 minutes, 3 things that you guys can bond over, and put that in your message of connecting. And your response rate, it's going to be a little more impactful.
And that's a reasonable intentionality. But I'd say, look, think about how many people we're connected to, let's say on LinkedIn. And it's in the many, many multiple thousands, I know, for a lot of people. Certainly is. And the question I would have is, how many of them did you have one connection to, and you never ever bothered to go back and engage them again? And I have to tell you, if you look at that ratio, that's where you start increasing that Dunbar number from 150 to multiples of that. If you, in fact, on an intentional basis, are keeping up with and engaging folks because there's common elements that you have. You're all, trying to do something to help each other. And obviously a lot of that's that.
Well, so let me thread what you said, Gerry, with Dan's comment, is that intentionality. Gerry, when you reach out to me or you say my name in public, that is a magic moment for me. That makes me feel something. Okay. And so to Dan's 3x3, if you take that pause and you find the commonality and you reach out to somebody based on that, it goes back to, I think it's Maya Angelou, the quote, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel, or what. I totally butchered that, butchered that quote. Right. But I think about the moment you created, Gerry, where you built that bond with the author, that you went through the trouble of sending a note to the publisher to pass along, and then for them to get back in touch with you, or Dan, the 3x3, rather than just blink. I mean, like, Gerry, you made the comment about like having a community of 30,000 software engineers, right? If I can't make that software engineer feel important, then it doesn't matter. It only reduces itself to some kind of transactional instance, right?
Sure.
And I think as recruiters, I think that we've gone through an era of where we were doing a lot of transactional recruiting because hiring was up. It spiked after the pandemic, that maybe we have forgotten how to create those magical moments where, I mean, like Gerry, like, so guys, real quick, Gerry, last year or 2 years ago at Transform, Gerry was like, "You're coming to dinner with me, right?" Or Unleash. It was like, "You're coming to dinner with me, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yes, sir, I am." Right? Like, that was, I can't remember what we talked about other than the efficacy of employment law, but like, just for you to say, "Oh, you're coming to dinner, right?" Like, I was like blown away, and it just made that moment and let me know that I was, yeah. But if you can't make that moment with 30,000 software engineers, you shouldn't have 30,000 software engineers on your.
Right. So you again, intentionally, you got to be able to focus against what that is. I'll give you one example of a recruiter who, geez, I've known him forever and I can't think of a name right now, but focused on veteran hiring. And he is a veteran, and actually worked in special forces, or worked supporting special forces for a number of years, but became a real advocate for military recruiting, and at Sears and then Amazon and then a couple other places. And I had a conversation with him one day to say, well, what do you do with recruit? Your responsibility for recruiting includes obviously talking to a number of military folks who are not going to get the job. What do you do?
Yeah, because we're in the no business. We're in the no business.
He says, I don't lose any of them. He said, if for the job itself, if I'm not going to hire them, I am fully committed to staying with them until they get a job. Every single one who doesn't get a job with me at Amazon, Sears, wherever he was, I don't I keep it back in touch with them. I make a point of noting and going back to them over and over and over again until in giving them advice, helping them out, and eventually they find a job, not with me, with someone else. And I appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that I never left them. I stepped up. But here's what made life easy for him. He got to know them to a level from a relationship point of view that when he moved to a new company, he could draw on almost anyone out there that he had done this with. And he would call them up and say, now's the time. I've got a job that will work for you. You're not just, it's not somebody you're somebody I'm going to actually hire. And the answer they would give is, absolutely. If you think this is good for me, I'm coming.
Oh,
So he's reducing the friction over time of the work that he did in support of the kinds of folks that he wanted to surround himself with, which were veterans. I found that brilliant. Brilliant. And again, because of the focus, and so it's a different level of relationship he was building with candidates. And he's focusing in on folks that did not get hired. And I love that shit, because most of us in working with, 200 people apply to the job, how much of a relationship can you really have with any of those that you don't go forward with? But he found a commitment that he cared about. And so he was real. He was authentic. He obviously put in the time, energy, and effort. But the return on that long term, it's pretty freaking good.
I think I forgot if it was you, Gerry, or Brian, you stated if your call is out there or you put a text message, are you going to get a response back? Whether it was now or 6 months or 2 years, that's the biggest impact. Like if I was literally talking to a customer that, working through some details, whatever, and I knew he had a baby recently. And so I texted him, was like, hey, I think it's around this due date. Not sure if you've had it yet, but you want to say, prayers out, hope everything's okay. And he responds back with a picture of his baby girl. And if you get that response back, the relationship's good. I always joke around with our sales team. Hey, are you on a texting basis with your customer? No, I'm like, okay, well then the deal's not dead, or it's dead. If you can text your POC, whether it's a hiring manager, leader, candidate, whatever it is, if they text back and you're at a texting basis with them or a calling basis, a relationship's really, really strong.
And I love that, Dan, for a number of reasons, and partly because, Brian, you were talking about showing up. And I have to tell you, that's what you have to do from a consistency basis, is show up for others. And then you might have an expectation that your relationship is good enough that if you called them and they didn't call you back, you'd be disappointed, because you feel that your relationship is strong enough that at least, you'd call me back and say, no, I can't fucking help you. Excuse me. I can't help you. You know what I mean? It's
because a lot of it, a lot of it is people only want what they want when they want it, and it's not the other way around.
Like shooting at people that I don't know well enough. I had one or two interactions with them. They have no expectations of what I would do for them. So I can't have expectations for what they could do for me in terms of just responding on to me. So I'm okay with all of that. But there are folks, lots of them, that I care enough about that I will show up for them unquestionably. And at some point they get that I will do those things. If you're aligned to trying to improve our industry or advance our profession, I'll show up, because that's my only goal in working. So I don't have to worry about building relationship with candidates, because I don't have to recruit those suckers anymore. It's been a while, but there's other things that keep me in the game and keep each of us in the game. And if we really treasure those things, then you want to find those that you're aligned with, and help satisfy their success needs. And over time, that gives you the satisfaction of moving forward in everything you do. And I think you see that intuitively, it's there. So for so many of the folks out here in our business, especially those that are engaged in a community of focus, so it's there, but I just don't think it's conscious enough in terms of saying, look, in order to move our profession forward, we need collectively to help one another succeed.
Ryan, you challenge the readers in your newsletter to disconnect and then reconnect. And in the industry driven by metrics right now and speed, what's your advice to the recruiting community who feel that they don't have time to slow down? With the example of, that military recruiters taking the time to re-engage the people that didn't get the job.
Ryan's posts are almost consistently on that theme. I mean, so one of the reasons why, I raise the issue is because you are constantly telling people you're better than you might think. You need to step up and do the things that you know to be right. You're constantly doing that.
So there are a few things that are going on. Is one, I think if you've read me long enough or you've known me long enough, you know that I struggle with anxiety and depression. And writing for me is a way to overcome that and to fight that battle and to be the strong warrior. The person I'm fighting the battle for is me. Maybe I'm also fighting it for my daughter because, I'm dad, right? So that is a constant theme. But the other theme, and Dan, about the slowing down to speed up, I think there are a few things that are out there. Like I've got Cal Newport's Thinking Fast and Growing Slow, Daniel Kahneman. But I made a comment in therapy with Dr. Cassie. That's my therapist, Dr. Cassie. You may have picked up on that in some notes too. Is it Dr. Cassie? She said, "What are you doing for yourself?" And I said, "I'm taking a 30-minute break at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock." And I didn't realize when I said it that when we're going through all those classes about how to drive a car, your hands are supposed to be at 10 and 2. And that's how you keep control of the car. And I didn't think about it until I guess maybe 2 weeks ago when I was like, look, I'm at 10 and 2. I'm doing fine, like whatever. And I did this thing with my hand and she was like, did you ever compare it to driving? And I was like, no. So I think that you've got to step back so that you can take control of what is happening, right? I'm not saying step back and lose control. I'm saying have a digital Shabbat, right? Like put the phone in do not disturb, go to bed early. For me, it really is doing nothing at 10 o'clock, I put my do not disturb on, and at 2 o'clock, but today's the exception because I got to hang out with Gerry and Dan and with Rima and Samantha and Shannon Pritchett and Mia and all these other wonderful people. Take a break. It's going to be there. You're going to fill the role. It's going to be there. But take a breather, take a deep breath. And that's shout out to Anna Morgan, who did her Evolve conference. Anna had somebody there that was a breath coach to teach people how to breathe. And when you think about, does that serve a purpose at an HR conference? On face value, it doesn't. Like, you're like, what is this? It's kind of hokey. Like, what am I doing? Dan, you're right. We're running so fast. We are focused on those KPIs. But are we so focused on the KPIs that we're focused on the activity that we're not focused on the outcome, right? And that goes back to what you talked about intentionality, what Gerry talked about intentionality, all these efforts that we make. So when I'm intentional and I'm writing about the shit hitting the proverbial fan, or how I'm navigating this, thank you, Christine, or how I'm navigating this, I want to be a map for myself. And if mapping it out for myself also serves the purpose of mapping it for other people, so be it. That way, I mean, there was a conversation I was having with Jason Singer. I don't know if you guys know Jason. He's another mentor to me. He's in Atlanta. We've worked together off and on for like 10 years. It's like him and Jem Loud like kind of go in and out of my ether. But he was like, he made a comment at breakfast one morning. It was like, you're either a consumer or you're a creator. I'm like, and he goes, you're a creator. And I'm like, oh, really? Because all the stuff that I put out. But like, you know, when you think about what you put out, it's also what you put in and what you deposit into people and into those relationships, right? Like Jill and I, like Jill, I think we have a great relationship. You can tell the audience that we don't, right? Like you know, we commiserate together, we celebrate together. It's about, okay, thank you, Jill. You didn't have to adore me. I just need, okay, all right, whatever. It's all good. But the reality of it is this goes back to what Gerry was saying, is that you've got to put in, you've got to make those small deposits. It's like James Clear. I know it's like my Amazon book list. It's like James Clear. You got to get 1% better every day. It's that you just got to put those little droplets in there. So as long as you're doing that, as long as you're building that roadmap and keeping your hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, you're going to have control, but you got to take a deep breath.
Yeah, it's the how you're doing it too, though. I mean, you as you shared, you know, you have anxiety, you have whatever, you're working on those things, but you're translating what you learn, perhaps about yourself or what you see in the mirror, et cetera, into the kind of attitude of empowerment for others. So it is. I will tell you, there's not a shitload of posts that I would read consistently. I read yours consistently because it aligns so much with an attitude that I believe we should try and be in the moment around, in terms of empowering others to be able to be their best. That's all.
Gerry, real quick, that probably comes from you to Steve to me.
Well,
right?
whatever.
Because
bullshit.
I mean, like
It comes back in spades for me, so I'm fine.
yeah. So I mean, you know, it's like, you know, from the first time that I read anything on Recruiting Inferno, right? Like, or Bullion Black Belt, I've always felt that it is our responsibility in this community to make it easier for the next generation.
Mhm.
And to pass it down. And again, if that's a reverberation or influence, yeah.
And all I'm saying is that each of us, and I'm seeing a lot of the conversation in the sidebar there, has a way for doing it for themselves. Each of us does it differently. You sure as hell don't do it the same way that Steve does, and there's no need to.
Well, you can see that in my physique, right? Like he gives me shit about. He's like, oh, you want to work out this morning? I'm like,
I used to get so, and I'll tell you, because I've told him this. I used to get so pissed off at him because somewhere in March or April he would disappear, and he wouldn't appear back until October. And that's because for 30 some odd years or however many years he was a lifeguard at Jones
Beach.
So, you know, recruiting was like a half-year job kind of thing. He'd go back into recruiting when he was tired of being whatever. But now, even though he's still ripped, he's it would be a little tough for him to take that boat and put it over his head and go out in the water. So anyhow, yeah,
Talking about but he's
in terms of that. But again, you can identify the people who are committed to our profession, committed to doing what they can do. What is it that we do to align ourselves with those folks? as opposed to just randomly accepting people on whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, or the many different social media pieces that we all have, which is beginning to overwhelm me. But I know many folks my age, they're totally confused, so they're not even engaged anymore.
As we talk in the water and being a lifeguard, Brian, you talked about the ripple effect of relationships, and somebody like me, I want instant gratification, instant success, instant rewards based on my relationships, etc. What is the best example of recruiting relationships that took years to pay off and had success that, hey, for a long time, I've been pursuing this person, or finally got out to lunch with the individual, and finally, hey, they showed me something, they taught me something, and it really made an impact. But it wasn't right away.
Oh, that's Jeff Ma. So real quick, Jeff Ma, you can look him up on LinkedIn, or you can go see the movie 21 starring Kevin Spacey. Jeff Ma is the captain of the MIT blackjack team that fleeced all the casinos. Okay. So real quick, Jeff Ma was also the founder of a company called Tensor, which was a social aggregation reading platform. I was trying to recruit him to be the chief data scientist at Cabbage, and he had an offer on the table to come to work at Cabbage or to be purchased by Twitter. And Jeff and I stayed in contact for 5 or 6 years. And when I came to Amazon, Jeff actually sent me a message and said, "Why'd you go to Amazon? You could have come to Twitter." And that started the entire conversation when I was at Amazon to come to Twitter. And so he actually left Twitter and went to Microsoft shortly after I joined. But when I think about impactful relationships that did not have an immediate return on investment, it would be the relationship I cultivated with Jeff Ma. I mean, I was just so enthralled with his work, what he was doing. I mean, the story of his life, these books that had been written about him. It's Jeff Ma.
Gerry, same question.
It would be a different kind of thing. I can go back to the first hire I ever made at Johnson & Johnson. In a very prideful way, I managed to steal somebody from 3M to work on clinical adhesives. When he joined J&J, one of his problems was his wife needed a job. I helped her find a job. I got sued by 3M for stealing somebody that could use the algorithm that they had for adhesives at J&J, they thought. And I told a group of lawyers at J&J, just defend me because I didn't do it for that reason, and he's using a different kind of things for adhesives. Anyhow, we solved all these various problems. That was probably 45 years ago. We still exchange Christmas cards. As an example of just relationships. I followed his career through J&J. I had left J&J. He left. He became president of a pharmaceutical company many, many years afterwards. So people. But I would tell you that's an exceptional kind of thing. The thing that satisfies me the most is I do on a regular basis talk to people that I knew 15, 20, 25 years ago who are still in our space and are doing things that I think are really amazing and positive, leading large numbers of people who who appreciate that when they were on their road, that they could access me and I would be helpful, that I would show up. So, it's very satisfying and contenting, if you will. The contentment there for that is powerful. And the fact is, I still enjoy every week meeting people I've never seen before who've written something really new, and I send them a note, and I get a nice response, and offer, if they're interested, here's the link to my calendar. If you'd like to chat a little bit deeper, that's fine. But it's somebody that's trying hard to do what they need to do. Somebody who's got some, enthusiasm and excitement about our profession. And I think that's what we owe toward the end of our careers is empowering or helping to empower folks who are passionate about what we do. And learning, how to do it well. So yeah, I don't have any expectation about a return on investment in anything less than 10, 15, 20 years. I need another 30 to hang out, but we'll see.
As we wrap up, what's one thing of advice that they can apply to the everyday recruiting world right now as things are changing? What's one thing that they can take away from this webinar and really apply it right now, their everyday workflow?
I think every single day, I think it's important to be doing something that you can take pride in. And it could be, the pride you feel in terms of the win when somebody accepts the job. And you should, it's like, you hit a really good ball when you're playing golf. You should be standing there watching it. I'm not spending a hell of a lot of time doing that when you hit a bad one, but at least understanding why you hit the bad one. But there, I think we all need to understand a little bit more about what will be contenting for, or what will give you contentment as a recruiter. And I can't believe that simply putting a body in a seat is what would give you contentment. That's a transactional whatever. And if you have to put food on the table, I get it. But beyond putting food on the table, where do you take pride in what you do? And I think it is the excitement of seeing somebody that you've helped take on a new job. And then I'm curious and actually compelled to follow them. So I'm interested in the people. I used to be interested when I was hiring significant numbers of people. I didn't stop when they started their job. I wanted to know that they were getting on well. And I can remember J&J calling several heads, hiring managers, and chiding them on their ability to manage. That they made promises to the people that I gave them that they weren't keeping up with. So I feel very responsible for that. And that's how I grew up.
Ryan, you're thinking, I see something.
I mean, like the highlight of this afternoon and is just getting to chill out with Gerry. Like, I mean, here's the thing: is it sometimes so like I'm a little hard of hearing. So sometimes when I'm hanging out with Gerry, it's loud, it's rancorous, right? And like I can't hear everything Jerry's saying. But like, if I have to follow that, I think that what I try to do is ask two questions to every candidate. And one question is going to be my follow-up, kind of similar to what Gerry said, is that I say, and if this sounds canned, it's probably because I need to freshen it up somehow, is that I say, hey, Jill, you know what? I've read your resume. I've read over your LinkedIn profile. I'm excited to speak with you today. Could you kind of give me a 2-minute snapshot about where you've been and about where you're going? I need to know what you want to do next. They're going to go through their resume. They're going to tell me some things. And then I'm going to refocus and say, I need to know what you want to do next. Right. And the reason that I'm trying to do that is so that I can marry them to an opportunity that I can come back to them in 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. Yeah. The 18-month tour of duty that Reid Hoffman laid out in the Alliance. I follow that. I want to know at the 3, 6, and 18-month mark, are they doing what they wanted to do next? I've got a whole Apple Notes about what people wanted to do next. Sometimes I talk to people on Follow-Up Friday. So Follow-Up Friday, it's my Hot 100. I reach out to 25 people each Friday about what's going on in their world, not what's going on in mine. It's a text message, it's a phone call, it's an email, it's my Hot 100. And I just want to know how they're doing and if they're doing what they set out to do. And if they're not, how can I help them go from better to best? That's it. And I would say, I mean, like the key takeaway is recruiters, mount up, ask good questions, and listen. 6-letter word, listen. I think it's 6 letters. I can't count. All right, whatever.
Love it. I just want to say thank you so much. I respect the heck out of both of you. And you guys been a mentor. Both of you have been mentors to me in my journey. And I just want to say thank you for that. Not even just professionally, but personally. So thank you so much for the wisdom and the support and everything that you do and the impact that you're making. Again, you might not feel it right now, but you're impacting the next generation for years to come. And I just want to say, from everybody that's involved, we want to say thank you for doing that. So, cheers.
Cheers.
A little action item.
Too early for the wine. We'll get.
If you want to get more involved, we have FRBR conference February 25th in 2 weeks. So feel free to sign up. Your team's there. This webinar will be up on YouTube by next week, and we'll put something up on social so you can have access to that as well. Again, I want to see you guys.
Hey guys, wait a minute. Wait. I need everybody here to do something for me. I know we got 20 people left in the room. FRBR. We keep making it bigger. We keep making it better. This is Dan's baby. We got to get more people involved. We got to grow this community. We got to create better, and we're creating great content. We got to make sure we're driving people to it. Dan, that's it. That's all I'm saying. I'm done.
Love it.
Bottom line.
Well, again, thank you so much for showing up. Again, you guys are the reason for the success of anything we do here at Hire Easy. Go check us out, how we can make your recruiting teams better. And until next time, I'm Dan Harten, and we'll talk to you guys later.